Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you have already subscribed, let me know. And if you're going to subscribe, let me know. And then let me know where you're watching from and who you are, and shout yourself out and do all of that in the comments. Like, let's just flood the comments with just amazingness. Question: when does your internship? Don't make me cry. Don't make me cry. When does my internship start? I don't know. Whenever Corona leaves us alone. I was actually supposed to start, what's this month? May? Yeah, like in May, but it's kind of no point because it's like Corona just shut down. Every time I think about that, I get sad. I'll just be honest. I loved Nashville. That was just so fun, and hanging with you guys. That's when it starts, whenever this is over. I do have something to tell you, though. I'm actually going to text you. It's actually really, really good news. Really, really good news. You're gonna love it. And I'm going to love it. But you're going to love it even more, John. Yes, okay, we got from Richmond, VA, going to subscribe. Yes, subscribe. Already subscribed. Okay, who else is watching? Who else is watching? From where? Where's your state? Shout yourself out. Put your Instagram in the comments. What Baltimore. I love the crab cakes. I wish I had one right now. How are you celebrating Memorial Day? How did I celebrate Memorial Day? Because it's Tuesday now. That was yesterday. But we cooked on the grill here at my house. I actually went to a rib spot with my mom to get some ribs, and they didn't have any food left, actually. It was a whole restaurant, and they had no food. So that was crazy. That was actually really crazy. Spot on Temple Hills Road, if you from the DMV, PG County specifically. It's over there in Temple Hills Road. Another question. See, this is what I like. This energy that Instagram brings is unmatched. When do you preach again? I actually am going to do a revival very soon. I have to just go record a sermon this week, or I think this week I'm going to record it. I'm waiting for Taylor to let me know when I'm supposed to send in the sermon, but I've been recording sermons, and preaching to the pews is no joke. It's no joke, but it's doable. So I'll be sure to let you know when that revival is and when it will air. And of course, you can always go on YouTube. I have sermons up there. I'm actually going to drop one sermon tomorrow or the day after that. I have to edit it. And yeah, so we still kind of quarantining, even though it's not the same of traveling. You know, it's kind of ironic because you can be several places at one time. One time I was preaching at 2 churches on the same day at the same time, which is impossible in person, right? Is there only one Memorial Day? How many Memorial Days are there? Well, really, every day is Memorial Day if you want to memorize, and remember those fallen soldiers. So I don't know, but the actual Memorial Day was on Monday, and today is Tuesday. But no. I actually use something called Beauty Counter. You should really look it up. Beauty Counter is amazing. You can buy it from representatives that sell it. Few of them that I just got a crazy text. Sierra, goodbye. I rebuke you. I rebuke you. No. So I use Beauty Counter, and they have amazing products. There's several people whom I follow that sells it. I don't sell it, but very qualified people. I could point you into that direction. Yeah, Beauty Counter is amazing. Oh, another thing I use, of course, witch hazel. I use the Indian clay mask too. Okay, Indian clay mask as well. I use that, and I mix it with the apple cider vinegar, and it helps as a toner. Yeah, that's the skincare. I made it up in my mind that I was going to work on my skin. It's not quite where I want it to be, but it's gonna get there. It's gonna get there. What's the funniest thing that happened to you in church? All right, this is a loaded question. The funniest thing that has happened to me in church, it was because of me, actually. One time I got up to preach, and I was sick and I didn't feel well. I didn't have coronavirus. This was before coronavirus, so that was actually dumb. Sorry. Okay, so I got up to preach and I wasn't feeling well, so I took some Alka-Seltzer before, but I couldn't remember when I took it. So before I got up to preach, I took more Alka-Seltzer. So by the time I because that was the help of the Holy Ghost. That was the funniest thing that's happened to me. Kind of embarrassing. There are several other funny things that have happened to me. I mean, when you go to churches all the time, things just happen. I'll never forget, like, one time a lady bust into the pastor's office while I was in there asking for the pastor. It's like all kind of crazy stuff. I can't even begin to tell you. One time somebody said that I was at Princeton Cemetery and not the seminary. It was weird. And I don't know if they were trying to be funny, because people sometimes call, the seminary the cemetery. People, I don't understand it. Yeah. How do you effectively use sermon illustrations at time if the preacher is not keenly aware the illustration can override the whole sermon? I think that's a good question. I am not an illustrative person. I actually have never, or are you saying illustrations as in actually having something physical that you're illustrating, or are you saying an illustration like literary illustration? Clear that up for me. But as far as physical, like something I'm holding and doing an illustration, I've never done that. But that's not to say that it's not doable or that it's not beneficial. I've seen it done well, and I've seen it done bad. I think that the illustration is only powerful when the peak of the illustration, you've reached the peak or the message of the sermon, right? And so I think that's when you ask the question, is it beneficial or is it harmful to the message that you're trying to preach? And I think throughout the illustration, it should be working to the climax of the message or the point that you're trying to make, rather than them focusing on the illustration. You got to be strategic with that and smooth and anointed. Everybody's not anointed to do illustration. DiamondJGantt.com or DiamondJGantt at gmail.com. That's how you can contact me. DiamondJGantt at gmail.com directly. Yep. Oh, nothing physical. Oh, to support your point. Yeah, so I think I answered the question. Any illustration that you use should work towards the climax of the message. It should always be in line. And I think also with illustrations, you got to be careful, because you have to really think through how to say it best. Your wordings, your pronouns, your you be very strategic and sit down and work through that. So that's my opinion. What's the illustration hang. Oh, I guess that is kind of. This is it. I don't know. My granddad. That's his work of art. I don't really know. I don't know what that means or what it. But did you see it? Let me know if you saw it. Yeah, that's the illustration hanging on the wall. That next question. What are your majors in college? So at Hampton, I studied political science. Again, with the focus on ethics and philosophy. So if anyone knows who how I kind of think and my thought process, thought track, that's why I think like that, especially the philosophy and ethics piece. That was my emphasis. And I was going to law school. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to law school. I wanted to be a lawyer because I wanted to make money, and I thought I was good at arguing and studying. So that's something I wanted to do. But the Lord had other plans. And so now I'm at Princeton, and I'm getting my Master of Divinity, which is a professional yet sacred degree. You saw it? Okay, good. Yeah. So that's what I'm doing. So if anybody else is on here, drop your majors. If you're in school, drop your majors for a second. Let's just have some fun. Similar story. Yeah. It's funny because my mentor, who I really want to do it live with, he too was in the same predicament. Like, he was going to law school and then ended up going to get his Master of Divinity. Do I play any music instruments? Funny story. When I was younger, I played the drums. And, yeah, that's that. I'm going to leave that at that. There are pictures and videos that show, I want them to all die. But I did. Psychology undergraduate. Yeah, that's what's up. Drop those majors. Who are some of your preaching mentors? Now, there are people who I look at for preaching for different reasons, right? There's several different people I look at for different preaching strategy. Yeah, so I don't have just preaching mentors. I have people who I look at for preaching. I don't have preaching mentors, if that makes sense. I have mentors that they don't really help me in the area, quote unquote, of preaching per se. I look at their preaching, but that's not our mentor relationship. It's more than that. So I mean, definitely some of my mentors are Joseph Walker is a mentor of mine. Marissa Farrell is a mentor. Lisa Wea is a mentor, and I apologize. I want to actually use their titles correctly. That's Bishop Joseph Warren Walker III, Reverend Marissa Farrell, and Bishop Designate Lisa Wea, those are some of my mentors. I have other people in my life who I look at too. Noel Jones is the greatest, in my opinion. He's one of the greatest. I love Noel Jones. He's a wordsmith. He's just excellent. He has the intellect mixed with Holy Ghost. That's the best to me. When you have the intellectual piece and the Holy Ghost, it's the best. When yikes want a word preached to you, who do you go to? When you want a word, are you asking when I want a word to preach to me? The first person I'm going to go to is my pastor, Lanier C. Twyman. I'll listen to Jackie McCullough. I love to listen to Jackie McCullough. Of course, Noel Jones, Tolan Morgan, Dr. Tolan Morgan. I love listening to him. Who are some others I listen to? Dr. Gina Stewart. It just depends on what mood I'm in. I'm a preacher, so what I want to hear, I'll listen to that person for that. That's who I'm listening to. And those names are not limited to that's not limited. That's not a limited list, because there are others that I can't quite think of right now. But, yeah. How do I become a better writer for the sermonic moments? I think you got to learn your voice. There are several things that go into that question. How do you become a better preacher for the sermonic moment? The first thing is to learn your voice and learn how God speaks to you, right? Because the worst thing you can do as one of my mentors would say, it's become an ecclesiastical mutt, right? Where you just are a mixture of everything that you hear and every preacher that you hear. You don't want to be that. You don't want to be that. So you need to learn your voice, learn your message, and then kind of flow through that vein. I think, you got to figure out what kind of preacher. Are you going to be an expository preacher? Are you a word preacher? Are you a 3-point preacher? What is your flow? What works for you? But you got to be confident in that. You have to become confident in that. And then when you, in your sermon writing process, you have to ask the question, are you one that is revelatory? Like, do you get the revelation and then you find the scripture to go along with it? Or do you find the scripture and then, the revelation comes? All of those kind of questions that I'm throwing out there. I think that the most important thing is not to let your revelation overstep the word, right? Because oftentimes, and that goes back to the illustrator question, the illustration question that you asked about preaching is that sometimes the revelation can become, the meat of the sermon rather than the word being the meat. And now we're just like, okay, what was said? What was the point of this? And so I think being a good preacher, of course, it comes from listening to good preachers is good, but that's not all it's about, right? Because you'll become an ecclesiastical mutt. You'll be listening to everybody who is preaching, and you'll be a mixture of that rather than being faithful to your God-given voice. And so that's important. Studying is key. Finding the way that you study is key. Your course of study when you're approaching your sermon. What are the ways that you study? Are you doing word searches? Are you all of those things come into play? And so that's my answer to that question. If you have others. I think I've been revelatory in my writing. I'm giving the subject and then I write around it. Yeah, that works for some people. I think that I think with that method though, you have to make sure that you are true to the text, because we can be revelatory and get all kind of revelation and then it takes another shape that has nothing to do with the text that we've decided to take. And so you got to be very disciplined. And then another thing that I talked about on another live the other day is, when you're deciding what you're going to preach, awareness is key. You have to be aware of your context. You have to be aware of where you're going, the places that you're going. You don't go in, if you're preaching to a group of preachers and you're trying to preach a youth ministry message, that does not work. So you need to be aware. All of those things are important. They're important. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but that was a good question. Do you plan on starting a church? No, I do not. I think that God has his hand. God has God's hand on church planners and those who are called to start a church. I don't believe that's something that I'm called to do. And if I am, the Lord will reveal that to me one day. But no. And if I pastor, prayerfully, it would be a church that's already established. And that's a major if. Yeah. Let me put your question up there. That was the question. Okay, what is your stance on black men in America treated like we are? That's a great question. That's a great question and a relevant question. And you see, even my disposition has changed because I'm sick of it. The reality is, let me preface my answer by saying this. We will never, even as women, with all that we deal with, we will never understand what it's like to be a black man in America. We will never understand the fear that you all deal with. We will never understand the scrutiny that you all are under just because of the color of your skin and your gender. We'll never understand it. And I could go into a whole nother piece with that, of women who have their issues, but we don't understand the men's issues. But I think it's ridiculous. I think that we are tired. I often ask the question, how long do we have to deal with this? you, because every time we see one of these pictures, right, we see a family member, we see a cousin, we see a brother, we think about our future children, and it's ridiculous. I think that the deep-seated racism in America, the deep-seated racism in our injustice system must be dealt with, and it's a heart matter. And I say this to anybody who's watching, or to just anyone in general, that we can't, first of all, sit by and watch this, but we can protest, we can raise our voice and make posts all day, because every time I see a young black man that's killed, I'm going to repost it, because I understand that I have white men and women who are on my page who see these things. And so the question becomes not, will we lift up our voices, because we've already done that. We do that constantly. Every time somebody dies, how many hashtags are we going to have to post? We're already doing that. Someone even said we're becoming billboards for our own deaths. So that's that. But the question is, when are those who are sitting at the table with these racists, when are those who are sitting at the table with their family members, those who are sitting at the table in classrooms with those who are racist and who will admit it, when will they stand up against them? That's how I feel. And the oppressed cannot win on their own. The oppressed can't do all the work by themselves. It has to be the job of those who have the ear of the oppressors. And I'm not talking about the political ear. I'm talking about the sitting at the table on the golf course type of ear. That's who's going to be key in making the change. And so what is my stance on it? I'm tired. We're all tired. What more can we say? We're tired of it. We're sick. Every day it's something. And so now I don't use justice system. I actually saw Howard John. He was the first person I saw to say it's just an injustice system. It's unjust. And I know that we have to fight, but we also gotta pray. We gotta pray that these hearts, that it's a heart issue, man. It's, and then I'll end with this. Now it's to the point where you see the pictures and you can barely even look at it for the disdain, just the sickening, the heartbreaking, all of the emotions that come into play. It's too much. So my stance is tired. It's tired. All right. Okay. Tired. An arms race is on the horizon. I truly understand Malcolm X vantage point by any means necessary. Absolutely. And the crazy thing is that so many people today, our generation, really are on the side of Malcolm X, because you always talk about the Martin Luther King versus Malcolm X kind of mentality, and I'm not going to sit here and say who was right and who was wrong, because I agree with many of their stances. Some of the things that each of them said I believe in, but so many of them agree with Malcolm X. And the peace is like, well, how long are we going to just sit here and be peaceful? They're forcing us to the point where we are contemplating a life for a life. Yeah. Sitting at the table, drinking tea, taxation on the lives of black people. Okay, I'm back. Can y'all hear me now? Can y'all hear me? Can you hear me? Please let me know. Please let me know if you can. Okay. All right. What was the next question? Is it time to discuss Michael Todd's viral sermon clip? I can't touch on that because, okay, you all can hear me good. I haven't seen the clip. And I don't really care to talk about another man's sermon. I think what he's doing on is touching lives, and he's bringing people to Christ. I can't touch on that. I haven't seen the sermon clip. I've seen people talk about it, but that's it. So Yeah. Are there any other questions now that I'm back? Who's still with me? Please, just let me know that. Who's still with me? Who's still here? That's fair. Yeah, it is fair because I don't have anything to say. How can we be like Diamond Gantt? Okay, here's the thing. You don't really want to be like me, right? I think so many people see a lot of stuff that I do on the outside, but they don't really understand all that I do. I work pretty hard, and that's not to say that others don't, because a lot of people do. But my life isn't easy. It isn't easy. Sometimes I wish it was just a tad bit more easier. But to whom much is given, much is required. So the thing is, right? Don't be like me, be better than me. That's my answer to that. Don't be like me, be better than me. Somebody else asked another question. How are you able to determine? Okay, let's see. Hey sis, hey Jordan, hey. How are you able to determine your calling to preach? Whew. It's crazy because I don't know, that's let me rewind all the way and get my mind back to that train of thought. Okay, so here's the thing. People will always say to me, you know, you're called to preach, you're called to do this, you're gonna be just like your grandmothers. So my grandma's a ordained elder, and then one of my other grandmas, she's a senior pastor. And so people will always say that, and I will be like, absolutely not. I'm not preaching nothing. I'm going to law school. I'm going to be successful outside of the church. I'm not doing any of this. You can have it all. And one time I was at a conference and I was listening to the preacher, and I just began to get convicted. And I finally just said yes to the Lord. And I actually told the Lord, I was like, if this is something that you want me to do, then you're going to have to tell me yourself. And so I began to pray and fast, and literally that's when I just said, okay, I'm going to give a complete yes, not even knowing what would come of it, not even knowing that I would be preaching. That was never on my radar. It was just like, if you can just say yes, if I could get over that part of just saying, yes, I will do this, then, you know, that was my whole thing. I would cry because I just was like, Lord, me, preacher? And so it's crazy because even today, this morning, I was giving advice to a young lady who is, you know, determining her call into ministry. And I was saying, I think the real fear for somebody who's watching that may be like discerning that, the real fear, right, is first of all saying yes, but determining being called rather than being a preacher. So it's like, yes, I'm going to be called, but I'm not going to preach. I'll say yes to the call, but I'm not going to preach. But preaching comes with the call at times. And sometimes we're called. Everybody's not called to pulpit ministry, but what happens when you are? And so that's what happened to me. That's how I discerned my call. But then you realize that you may be called, but you might not be sent right away. I think the period, that incubation period of being called, and then, you know, that waiting period and then being sent is so imperative, because God will teach you so many lessons that you need to learn in that period. Great question. Let's see, we got one more. I'm gonna keep answering them. How do you know God is called? How do we even know God is calling us to something? How do we even know God is calling us to something? You won't know unless you talk to the Lord. I know that's real simple for me to say, but it can be difficult in practice, right? So if you feel a tug and you feel a calling to something, it can come through several avenues. It's not always an audible voice of God coming out of the, you know, sky saying, you my son, you my daughter. No. Sometimes you can just be led. Life will lead you to places that will lead you into your calling. Things that you care about can turn into a spiritual calling. I'm called to do this. So I think that's how you know when God is calling you something, but you can't feel the call or the tug and not talk to the person that's calling you, because you'll never learn more about it, right? So if my mom, if I know she wants me to do something, but I never go back to her to say, how do you want me to do it? When do you want me to do it? With who do you want me to do it? Then I'll never know all that comes with it. So I think that's how you discern your call. So you definitely got to talk to God. You can't leave God out of the discerning process, out of your calling process, because so many people do. And I'm like, make that make sense. You'll always be confused. You will. You always will be confused. You will always be confused. What is your favorite snack? I was just in a deep vein. Okay, let me take that hat off. So you want to be like Diamond Gantt? The person that said they want to be like Diamond Gantt, this is how you be like Diamond Gantt. You take on hats and you take off hats all day. So one hat could be marketing director, the next hat could be itinerant, the next hat could be on a panel, the next hat could be business owner, and then the next hat could be answering the question, what is your favorite snack while watching a movie? Sorry, this ring light is getting to my eyes. I think when I come out of this quarantine, my eyes I'm gonna need glasses. I'm gonna need glasses. You wanna know why? Because all of these panels and all these lives require me to have a ring light so I look decent. And looking at it for hours at a time is probably detrimental to my eyes. So pray for my eyes. Now, I say all that to answer your question. I don't know. Ice cream. I love Cold Stone ice cream. That's my favorite thing. Watching a movie and Cold Stone ice cream is the best ever. I get coffee ice cream. Coffee ice cream is the best ice cream ever. Okay? I don't know. What kind of ice cream do y'all eat? Those who are watching. I don't know. Just let me know. But coffee ice cream is the best with brownie, graham cracker crust, cheesecake ice cream on top. It's the best. So yeah. Divine ordination, decree, and provision. Yeah. Important. But yeah. So that person that said they want to be like Diamond Gantt, be careful what you ask for. I saw the clip of you and Dr. Hall. He is one of my favorites. How did that feel at that moment? And what did you take away from the entire experience? Sorry if you answered this already. I didn't answer it already. I saw it pop up and I missed it. I do apologize. Please pardon my error. That was... I have no words, but I'm going to explain it. But I have no words initially. That moment was life-defining for me. I was a senior at Hampton at the time. Just was preparing actually for one of the most important meetings of my life the next day. I actually had to leave the conference to go there. And when he called me, I just couldn't believe it because I just knew that I wasn't going to be called up there. But when he said that I would preach until demons tremble, I lost it because I didn't know. I had been preaching, but I hadn't been out there. Let me know if y'all can hear me. But I hadn't been really out there, and I didn't know what was on the other side of my yes. And so for him to say something like that just kind of validated what God was doing in my life. I think prophecy should always be validation. It's not going to be something new, but it should be something that validates what God is already doing in your life. And that's literally what it was. From that experience, I learned so much that you can't limit God. You literally cannot limit God. That next Todd, let me tell you this, what happened. I don't know what's going on with this. Dr. Todd Hall prophesied over my life. Lord, touch this Wi-Fi. That next few days, I got accepted into Princeton. The meeting that I had the next day, I was denied entry. I'm gonna leave it at that. And I ended up getting into Princeton. I had already been accepted to Duke and Vanderbilt. But who knew that within the next year, that I would be at Bishop Walker's church. They hadn't talked. So when I went to Bishop Walker's church to intern, that I think that summer, Prophet Hall came up to me and was like, "Oh, okay, I see you there, but they don't know that I'm the one that called this. I'm the one that called this. It was God, but I called it." And so that moment was just it was life defining. I mean, it's like nostalgia. It's like every time I watch it, I can't even watch the clip without literally tearing up. There's certain moments that I don't even watch after they happen because it's too much. It's just too much. Whew. All right, y'all trying to get me to cry on this live, and I'm not gonna cry. But that moment, it was something. It was life defining. Like I said, I can't watch that. I can't watch that without tearing up. I mean, if you haven't seen it, it's on my YouTube channel. Even when I preached in Nashville, I can't watch that video. I cannot watch it. I don't like watching myself preach at all, but I just can't watch it because the ending just makes me tear up. It's like, God, you're so bigger than anything I could ever plan. Like, you're so bigger than that. I always say God does not major in minor. God majors in major. Like, it's always going to be bigger. So that's the answer to that question. Are there any other questions? That night was crazy. It was crazy. Okay. Yeah. How do you... Okay, I answered your question. I got to put it across the screen, so... Yeah. Are there any other questions? If you're on here, I want you to subscribe. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube. I want you to hit the subscribe button on YouTube. How do you keep your faith in this generation? How do you keep your faith in this generation? That's a good question. A very relevant question, because this generation sometimes I feel is so talented. This generation is so gifted. But this generation fights against so much. So much. And I don't know, the enemy just really tries with this generation. I don't know, I think it's because we're defining. Like, even for us to be dealing with Corona right now, it's crazy. Like, I don't want to overly spiritualize it, but I can't help but think that way. I think keeping my faith in this generation is always looking up and not looking around. Being connected, right, horizontally, but making sure my faith is always connected vertically. I think we have to be careful because we get caught up by what's happening left and right. But if you keep your eyes up, people knew me. They knew who I was. And so I had to keep my faith. One, because I understood the bigger picture. I understood that it was bigger than just moments. How could I, until you ask the question, like, how can I do this to my God, right? Like, how can I do this one thing and jeopardize my whole calling and my relationship with God? That's how I keep my faith. You ask the question, is this going to be beneficial or is this going to be detrimental? Beneficial or is it going to be detrimental? And that will help you decipher through so much. So that's how I do it. That's how I do it. Let me see. I got 2 questions. Can y'all hear me? Let me know. Let me know. I'm ready to end this live because I don't know what's happening. I will see you all later. If you have questions, hit me up. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Go visit diamondjgantt.com. I have some new merchandise for you. And I'll talk to you